The church on New Terra's Edge was one of the few places that still looked like something from old Earth Simple. It was quiet, untouched by glowing towers and orbiting satellites. Rain tapped softly on the tall stained glass windows as a little girl, no more than 6, knelt at the front altar. Her name was Lena. She wore a patched gray coat, 2 sizes too big, and her boots were soaked from walking through the muddy streets with her mother. The building was almost empty except for a single quiet figure seated in the far back, hidden by shadows. Unnoticed, Lena closed her eyes tightly and whispered, as if trying not to disturb even the silence itself. God, I don't want toys. Or sweets. I just want a dad for Mommy. She paused, then added in a small voice. She cries when I sleep. I hear her. She's always tired. If I had a dad, maybe she could rest. In the back pew, Rayan sat still. Tall, well-dressed, with neatly trimmed hair and eyes that hadn't shown warmth in years. He wasn't there to pray. He hadn't done that since he lost the only person he ever loved. But tonight, something had drawn him in, and now he couldn't look away. The woman who soon came to collect the girl, Myra, had a worn face that still carried quiet strength. She took Lena's hand, whispered thanks to the altar, and turned to leave. She didn't notice the man in the shadows, but he noticed her. He watched them disappear into the rain, hand in hand. Something stirred inside Rayan. It wasn't pity. It wasn't sadness. It was something else. Something he thought had died long ago. He whispered to himself, "What am I doing here?" But deep down he already knew. Rayan stared at the rain through the church's high window long after Mira and Lena had gone. His coat lay beside him, untouched. His neural comms device buzzed with business calls he ignored. On New Terra, Rayan was known as a reclusa mysterious. Genius who built biodomes, cured star soil disease, and walked away from it all the day his fiancée died in a shuttle crash on Kepler-Vi. No one knew why he vanished from the public eye. No one dared ask, except his AI. Oren, his personal assistant, chimed softly in his earpiece. "You followed them home, sir? I've mapped the route. Would you like to know where they live?" "No," Rayan said sharply, then paused. "Yes." Just quietly. No surveillance drones, no intimidation. He wasn't sure what made him say it. Later that night, Rayan stood atop a high-rise across the district. Below, Mira's dim apartment blinked among rows of low-income shelters built for off-world refugees. She moved like someone used to surviving, checking the door locks twice, boiling cheap food in a tiny pot, wrapping Lena in a thick blanket as the girl smiled up at her, and Rayan remembered something. A time when he too had dreamed of starting a family, when he built a home off-grid for someone he loved, when he thought humanity's gift wasn't in its science, but in its capacity to love, protect, and rebuild. He hadn't felt human in a long time. But that night, standing in the shadows, he felt a pull he couldn't ignore. Oren whispered again. He always said humans are more than machines, more than data. Maybe you're about to prove it. Rayan didn't answer, simply watched. The lights go out in Myra's window, whispered the girl's prayer again under his breath, just a dad for Mommy. 2 days passed. Mira walked the same path each morning through the foggy industrial sector, past food stalls that smelled better than she could afford, all while holding Lena's hand. She worked odd jobs when she could find them, cleaning synth-plast windows, scrubbing old metal floors in rest stations, and sometimes helping repair colony greenhouses when they needed delicate work. But that morning, a stranger approached her near the library plaza, man in simple clothing, the gentle expression and kind eyes. "I'm with a local fund," he said. "We support single parents. There's a temporary position cataloging old Earth literature. Nothing fancy, but it pays." Mira hesitated. "Why me?" "Someone recommended you." He lied. Said you were honest, hardworking, careful with your hands. She glanced down at her daughter, then at the man. "All right," he introduced himself simply as Rayano. Last name, no title. Just a man with a calm voice and a way of looking at her that didn't feel pitying. Over the next few days, Mira began working quietly in the old-style library, carefully repairing bindings and organizing texts by hand, a job no machine wanted. Lena often came along and read in the corner. She didn't talk much, but she kept sneaking glances at Ari. Then, one afternoon, Lena left a folded note on the bookshelf where Rayan had been standing. He opened it when no one was watching. It read, "I remember you from church. You heard me. Thank you for smiling. Today Mommy didn't see, but I did." Rihan felt a tightness in his chest. Something real. He hadn't meant for this to become personal, but now he couldn't stop himself from coming back. Day after day, not to rescue them, not to be a hero, but because something about them made him feel human again, and he wasn't ready to let that go. Mira's life began to settle. The pay from the library job wasn't much, but it was consistent. For the first time in months, she could afford fresh fruit. Lena's coat was finally the right size. And every day Rayan visited, not always speaking much, but always there. But Mira remained cautious. She had learned long ago that kindness often had conditions. She never asked Rayan where he came from, or why a man like him was working for a small fund, but she noticed things. The way his fingers moved like someone used to commanding machines. How his quiet voice carried more authority than any supervisor she'd ever met. And how sometimes people seemed to move out of his way without realizing it. One night, she walked home from the market. A voice called out from the alley behind her. Well. If it isn't Myra of Sector 8. She froze. A man emerged. From the shadows, Dren, a smuggler from her past, back on the mining colonies. He used to protect women like her in exchange for loyalty and obedience. "I heard you escaped the outer ring," he sneered. "You think you can just start fresh on New Terra, alone without paying your debts?" "Hey, I owe you nothing," Mira said.
What?
Her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. Dren stepped closer, then stopped. Something buzzed in the air behind him.
What?
A drone shimmered into visibility, hovering silently. A voice came through a small speaker, calm, cold, unmistakable. "You will leave this sector immediately." Dren turned and laughed. "Who's that?" "Your boyfriend." The drone's eye glowed faint red. A dozen micropoints locked onto him. Dren's laugh died. "You are being watched from orbit," the voice said. "Your identity has been logged. This is your only warning." Dren cursed and vanished into the dark. Mira stood frozen. She looked up at the drono markings. No. Model ID. Only one man could summon a device like that so quietly, so surgically. The next day, Myra confronted Rayan in the library. "Who are you?" Rayan didn't lie. He only said, "Someone who has more power than he deserves. No one to use it for." Mira turned away, torn between gratitude and fear. She didn't know whether to push him away or to finally let him in. Myra didn't show up to the library the next morning, nor the day after. Rayan stood in the quiet aisles, staring at the empty chair where she usually sat, his hands clenched behind his back. He could have sent a surveillance drone to check on her. He could have pulled her address in seconds, but he didn't. Not this time. He waited, on the third day. She returned alone, her expression unreadable. "I know who you are," she said quietly, setting a small stack of books on the desk. "Rayan Thorne. The man who built New Terra's terraforming rings. The one who disappeared after the accident on Kepler V." Rayan didn't flinch. "I never meant to deceive you." "No," she asked. "You pretended to be a volunteer, hired me like I was some charity case, protected me without telling me it was you. And you got close to my daughter, without even saying your real name." "I didn't come into your life to fix anything," he said. "I didn't expect anything from you. I just heard her prayer. And for the first time in years, I felt something again." Mira looked down, her voice tight. "You don't get to feel something and then disappear again when it gets complicated. Lena already asks about you when you're late. She thinks you're..." The answer she prayed for, Rayan's face softened. "What do you think I am?" "I think you're a man running from your past. And I can't let someone like that get close unless they're ready to stay." He didn't reply. The silence between them was heavy. Then Mira turned and left the library, her coat fluttering behind her that night. Rayan sat alone in his high-rise, watching the city lights shimmer below. Oren spoke for the first time in hours, sir. Your ship is fueled and ready to depart. You requested we prepare for off-world travel. Rayan looked out into the stars. Somewhere out there were new colonies, new projects, untouched land begging for transformation, but behind him was a little girl who believed in him, and a woman who asked him, without words, to stop running. He stood in silence, and for the first time in years, he didn't know whether to leave or to fight for what he might lose. The emergency alert hit the city like thunder. A biodome collapse on the southern edge of New Terra triggered a chain reaction. An entire residential sector, Lincome, refugee, dense, was now flooding under toxic rain and failing gravity seals. Evacuation orders were late. Power lines failed. Panic spread faster than help could arrive. Mira and Lena were trapped there. They'd gone to deliver a meal to an older woman Mira used to work with. The moment the storm hit, Mira realized the shelter entrance was jammed and the backup escape tunnel had collapsed above the chaos in the command tower. Rayan stood before a panicked team of engineers and politicians arguing about protocol. He watched the live feeds families wading through black water, air pressure dropping fast. One small girl clinging to her mother's waist, Lena. No more silence. Rayan stepped forward, eyes sharp. This is over. I'm taking command. Mr. Thorne, this is a government facility. We can't. I designed this city, he said flatly. Every dome, every pump, every protocol. You either give me control or watch it collapse. He didn't wait for permission. Oren activated the Atlas-class rescue drone network, long retired and locked away. Within minutes, dozens of sleek, winged crafts deployed from the upper hangars, cutting through the storm. Scanning for survivors, Ryan descended himself in a pressurized exosuit, something he hadn't worn in years, landing with precision. In the failing sector, he moved toward the heart of the flood, inside a crumbling shelter. Mira held Lena above the rising water, her body shivering. She barely noticed the noise outside until the roof cracked and light burst through, and Rayan dropped down. She stared at him, speechless, water up to her chest. He moved fast. I've got you. Mira pushed Lena toward him. Save her. I'm not leaving without both of you. With Lena held in one arm and Myra clinging to his shoulder, Rayan activated the lift beacon. The three of them rose into the storm-soaked, trembling but alive. Back on stable ground, Mira collapsed in the emergency med tent. Lena was wrapped in blankets, whispering softly, I knew he'd come. Rayan sat nearby, breathing hard, his hands still shaking. He hadn't just saved lives. He had made a choice. He had stayed. Days after the dome collapse, New Terra's media buzzed with headlines. Mystery man saves dozens in sector for disaster. Terraforming pioneer Rayan Thorne returns from silence, a girl's prayer answered, a city's faith restored. But in a quiet part of the city, far from the spotlight, 3 lives were changing in ways no headline could capture. Mira sat on a bench outside the small church, the same one where it all began. Lena stood near the altar, placing a little drawing in the prayer box. It showed 3 people holding hands under the stars. With the words, "Thank you, God," in big block letters, Rayan waited just inside the doorway, watching them both with a gentleness in his eyes that had never been there before. He stepped outside, clearing his throat. Mira turned. I thought you might leave again, she said softly. I almost did, he replied. But I realized I built colonies, cities, and systems. But this is the only place that ever felt like home. Mira looked at him for a long time. Then she reached for his hand. You're not perfect, she said, but you stayed, and that means more to me than anything. Rayan knelt down as Lena ran to him, wrapping her arms around his neck. Does this mean you'll be my dad now? She asked. He smiled. Only if you and your mom say yes, Lena beamed. We already did. The church bell rang softly as the 3 of them walked out together, no longer strangers. It's no longer broken, just a man who once ran from everything, a woman who never gave up, and a little girl whose prayer reshaped the future of them all. The end.